am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation.
Score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon of hope to millions of Negro slaves who have been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity.
But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the life of Negro is still sadly crippled by manacles of segregation and chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro still languished in the corners of America's society and finds himself in exile in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition.
In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every man was full heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well white men, could be granted unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note, and so far as her citizens of color are concerned, instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given Negro people a bad check, a check with has come marked insignificant funds.
But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insignificant funds in this great vault of opportunity of this nation. And so we've come to cash this check. A check that gives us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice.
Come to this hallowed spot to remind Americans of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in luxury of cooling off or to take tranquilizing drugs of gradualism. Now it's time to take the real promise of democracy. Now it's time to rise from the dark and desolate the valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now it's time to lift our nation from quicksands and racial injustice, to take the solid rock of brotherhood. Now it's time to make justice a reality for all of the God's children.
It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summer of the blacks' legitimate discontent will not pass until there's an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. And those who hope that the black needed to blow off steam and will not be content will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. And there will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the black is guaranteed his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges.
There is something that I must say to my people who stand in the warm threshold which leads into the palace of justice. In the process of gaining our rightful place, we must not be guilty of wrongful deeds. Let us not seek to satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred. We must forever conduct our struggles on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force.
The marvelous new Melicity has engulfed the Negro community, must now lead us to distrust all white people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is tied up with our destiny, and have to come realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom.
We cannot walk alone as we can walk. We must make a pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back There are those who are asking for the devotees of civil rights when you will be satisfied. We can never be satisfied as long as Negroes is the victim of unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our bodies, heavy with fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of highways and the hotels of the cities. We cannot be satisfied as long as Negroes' basic mobility is form of smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating for whites are created equal.
I dreamed that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious races, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of insubordination and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day that every valley shall be extolled and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain and crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of Lord shall be revealed and fleece shall be see it together.
I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day in the state of Mississippi, a state of sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
This is our hope, and this is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out the mountain of despair, a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beauty symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom, knowing that we will be free one day. And this will be the day when all the gods and children will be to sing with one meaning.
If America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring from the prejudiced hilltops of Hampton. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California.
But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill in Molehill, Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring.
And when this happens and when we're allowed freedom ring, we will let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city. We will be able to speed up that day when all God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Proselytes and Catholics, we will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spirit.
Free at last, free at last.
Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.